Have you ever imagined what the android saga would be like if Dr. Gero had absolute control over his androids and also Frieza's DNA? This story exists, and it's an official story from the Dragon Ball franchise. Seriously guys, this story is real, and it's not a fan story, it's officially created. I'll explain it all to you. Stay connected in the channel and let's go to the video. Dr. Gero is one of the villains whose plans failed in the worst possible way. He wasn't prepared for the absurd power levels of the Super Saiyans and, ironically, ended up being eliminated by his own creations. The biggest problem was always that his androids were never fully obedient to him, both in the present and the future, leading to the same tragic outcomes for him. For those who don't know, it's explained that the reason Dr. Gero couldn't control androids 16, 17 and 18 was that they were simply too powerful. Basically, Dr. Gero couldn't control the infinite energy androids because they were too strong, which is why Gero's androids actually decreased in power as he created them, instead of the opposite. For example, he created 17, but after realizing he couldn't control 17, he created a weaker version, 18. And after failing to control 18, he made an even weaker version, 19. That one he was able to control. But what if, instead of just focusing on increasing the strength of these infinite energy androids, he had prioritized making his androids 100% loyal and reliable? Would that have been more effective in defeating the Z Warriors? Would he have been able to avoid his own destruction? That's the premise of the alternate story presented in the game Supersonic Warriors. In this version, instead of spending his resources solely on creating more powerful androids, Gero ensures that they are completely submissive and follow all his orders without question. So, here we have an official alternate version of the Android saga, and I'll tell you all about it. But first, don't forget to leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel, because that helps us a lot, alright? Now let's get into the story. The plot follows a similar path to what we know up to a certain point. In the past, Goku destroyed the Red Ribbon Army, and one of the survivors, Dr. Gero, spent years developing advanced technology to get his revenge. Just like in the original story, Trunks comes from the future and warns about the arrival of the androids, prompting the Z fighters to start training to prepare for these machines. So when the day of the androids' arrival comes, the Z fighters are already prepared. Just like in the original timeline, Dr. Gero eventually transforms into an android, but there's one big difference. In this alternate reality, he never created Android 19. And that changes a lot of events in the saga. When Goku and the others are waiting for the androids Trunks predicted, the one who shows up alone is Dr. Gero himself. To get their attention, he starts destroying the city, forcing the Z fighters to intervene. Since Android 19 doesn't exist in this timeline, Goku doesn't even get into a fight. Instead, Piccolo takes the battle, eager to test his 3 years of training, just like in the original story. In this version of the story, Gero spent less time improving his androids' power and more time ensuring they were secure and completely reliable. Since gaining power wasn't the main focus of Dr. Gero's studies, he himself wasn't as powerful as he was in the original story. Piccolo obviously defeated him without a problem, easier than in the original story. Piccolo's victory over the android reassured Goku and the others, as they realized the android threat wasn't as dangerous as future Trunks had described. After the battle, Gero flees to his lab, and the Z Warriors can't track him since, as an android, he doesn't have detectable ki, and because they didn't see Gero as a major threat, they didn't bother too much with pursuing him aggressively. In the laboratory, Gero realizes that he completely underestimated the strength of the Z Warriors, just like in the original story. Remember, when calculating the power of the Z Warriors, Dr. Gero did not take into account the events of the Namek saga. Even less did he consider that someone would come from the future to warn the warriors about the androids and that they would train for years to prepare. Knowing that he had no chance against them alone, Dr. Gero decided he needed help, so he chose to awaken Android 18, believing that, thanks to her infinite energy and the new information he had gathered about Goku and the others during the fight, she could defeat them with a few modifications. When Gero awakened Android 18, she followed his orders without question, showing that this time Dr. Gero had indeed succeeded in creating obedient androids. Despite this, out of caution, Dr. Gero only awakened Android 18, leaving the other androids inactive. Dr. Gero ordered Android 18 to initiate an attack to lure the Z Warriors. At that moment, Goku was already suffering from the effects of his heart disease, preventing him from fighting. Vegeta ended up taking the fight instead, arriving at the scene and being met by a puzzled Gero, who asked about Goku. Vegeta, of course, responded with disdain, stating that he was more than enough to handle the situation. At that moment, Vegeta had exactly the same power level as in the original timeline when he defeated Android 19. In other words, he was just a standard Super Saiyan. But that was more than enough to surpass Android 18. Despite Gero's upgrades and her unlimited energy source, she was still not strong enough to defeat Vegeta, as she had much less power than the original version of 18. In the end, Gero was forced to retreat once again, taking Android 18 with him. However, now he had valuable information. He knew that not only Goku, but also Vegeta and other warriors were capable of achieving the Super Saiyan transformation. Aware of all this, Gero decided to turn to one of his most promising creations, which he had been working on for a while: Frieza. In this version of the story, Frieza died the same way as in the original timeline, being defeated by Trunks. However, instead of his remains being completely destroyed, a small amount of genetic material survived. The same insect that Gero used to collect data on the Z Warriors battles managed to retrieve a sample of Frieza's DNA right after his death. With this material, Gero created a clone of the evil Emperor. Now, with this new weapon in hand, Gero was ready to launch a devastating attack on the cities. With Frieza by his side, Gero seemed to have an advantage, but his confidence was soon shaken. Future Trunks, who had just returned to the present, was shocked to see Frieza again. The surprise was even greater when he realized that Frieza blindly obeyed Gero's orders, treating him with absolute respect and being completely submissive. Gero explained to Trunks that he had managed to collect some of Frieza's genetic material and with it created an enhanced clone. Despite the surprise of seeing Frieza being used this way by the scientist, Trunks was not shaken at all and acted with complete confidence, knowing this wouldn't be a problem. The fight began, and to Gero's despair, the result was the same as before. Frieza was defeated and eliminated without a trace. But once again, this was not the end for Gero, as he took advantage of Trunks' distraction with Frieza to escape and return to his laboratory. With each defeat, the scientist learned more about the Z Warriors, studying their combat patterns and looking for ways to surpass them. This time, Dr. Gero decided to go all in and use his ultimate trump card, Android Cell, who was about to emerge from his incubation chamber. In this timeline, Gero had been much more efficient in accelerating Cell's creation. Instead of investing years in developing extremely powerful androids, like in the original story, he focused a large portion of his efforts and resources on speeding up Cell's growth, making the android's development much faster. However, Dr. Gero had not considered the possibility of Cell-absorbing androids 17 and 18 to reach perfection. The AI in the computer did not calculate this possibility and made Cell believe that he was already perfect from the moment of his creation. With the confidence that the perfect android was ready, Gero sent Cell to face Goku and the others. This time, Goku had already recovered, but knew that the android threat still loomed over the world. Because of this, he had personally trained Gohan, helping him master the Super Saiyan transformation. Together, father and son were enough to defeat Cell. However, since he didn't pose an imminent threat, they decided not to eliminate the android. Unlike in the original timeline, where Cell devoured people to increase his power, here, he never actually killed anyone. The greatest destruction was actually caused by Dr. Gero, who destroyed cities to attract the attention of the Z Warriors. Goku believed that Gero was only seeking revenge against him, and therefore didn't have a more sinister plan against others. In other words, in Goku's mind, Dr. Gero was only a threat to him and not to the rest of the world. And since he didn't mind putting himself at risk, he saw no need to kill these androids. Besides, part of Goku wanted Gero and his androids to survive so they could continue bringing him greater challenges, allowing him to evolve and have fun fighting. Meanwhile, Goku and Gohan continued their intense training, preparing for whatever might come next. Knowing that his creation still needed refinement, Gero used his supercomputer to awaken androids 17 and 16. After running some tests, he confirmed that both followed his orders without question. The next battle took place against Vegeta and Trunks, who at that time only had the standard Super Saiyan transformation, without the enhancements gained in the hyperbolic time chamber. This makes sense since the Z Warriors only felt the need to train in the time chamber because they were humiliated by the androids and realized they needed to evolve much faster. So, in a scenario where they won all their fights against the androids, there was no reason for them to train in the time chamber. Since training there was essential for the development of transformations beyond the standard Super Saiyan, it's natural that, at this point in the alternate story, they hadn't surpassed it yet. Well, Vegeta and Trunks' battle against the three androids was much more difficult, and the duo struggled, but in the end, they managed to come out victorious. Android 16 was about to sacrifice himself to allow his allies to escape. However, remembering that this android was created in the image of his deceased son, Dr. Gero didn't allow it to happen and decided to use a technique similar to the solar flare so that everyone could escape. In this reality, since Gero didn't invest as much in the raw power of the androids as in the original timeline, he focused on other aspects, such as techniques. In other words, in this timeline, the androids have a broader arsenal of techniques. In the end, the androids managed to escape once again. And, as in previous instances, none of the Z Warriors bothered to hunt down Gero or find his lab. After all, the androids in this timeline were different from the ones in the future and weren't nearly as powerful, which made Trunks focus entirely on strengthening himself through training with Goku and the others to one day defeat the androids of his own time. To sum it up, for the Z Warriors, all of this was nothing more than training and fun. Zero dignity for Dr. Gero and his androids. Back in the lab, Gero's supercomputer suggested that Cell could be enhanced by absorbing androids 17 and 18. Without hesitation, Gero decided to test this plan, and of course the androids accepted without resistance. Thus, Cell immediately evolved into a perfected form. Even with his new powers, Cell remained loyal to his creator. However, since the androids 17 and 18 in this timeline were weaker and Cell had never absorbed people to increase his strength, he didn't reach the same level as his original version. Still, his power was greater than that of a standard Super Saiyan. Gero ran several simulations and the results indicated that Cell could defeat Goku and Gohan. Convinced of his victory, he sent his ultimate creation to face the Saiyans. When Cell finally encountered Goku and Gohan, Vegeta was nowhere to be seen. Gero, curious, asked where he was, only to receive a mocking response from Goku, who said that Vegeta didn't find his toys fun, so he lost interest. Gero then ordered Cell to attack. Sensing the immense energy of this android, Goku realized that this time things would be different and told Gohan that they needed to give it their all. At that moment, both father and son had already surpassed the limits of a standard Super Saiyan, but hadn't yet reached the level of full power Super Saiyan. This makes sense since, without the time chamber, they didn't have the same amount of training time as in the original story. Additionally, they also didn't have that period where they were transformed into Super Saiyans for days, so they didn't fully control the energy consumption of the transformation. Gohan, on the other hand, had a different mindset compared to his father and Vegeta. Due to the constant threats from the androids, he took training very seriously and never underestimated his enemies. Gohan and Goku fought together against Cell, and at a decisive moment, they performed a powerful combined Kamehameha between father and son. Their attack was enough to severely injure Cell and take him out of the fight, but it wasn't enough to destroy the android once and for all. Dr. Gero was completely enraged by the defeat of his most powerful android, but Goku comforted him, encouraging Dr. Gero to improve and try again in the future. Humiliated by receiving words of encouragement from his own opponent, Gero declared that he would not accept defeat so easily. Swearing vengeance, he fled to his lab with his androids, promising to return stronger. After the battle, Gohan reflected and told his father that if he wanted, he could have eliminated Gero once and for all, right then and there. Goku agreed that the scientist was dangerous, but argued that there was no need to kill him at that moment saying that as long as Dr. Gero was focused on his research, he wouldn't cause any more trouble. All he could do was create new enemies for them to defeat. Gohan argued with Goku, saying that perhaps next time they'll face enemies that will defeat them. But Goku remained very positive, saying that all they need to do is get stronger, and that's exactly why they train every day. Dr. Gero continued to devise new plans to destroy Goku. With the changes in the timeline, the android's fate was completely different. With Cell alive and recovering, Androids 17 and 18 were not freed, meaning 17 wouldn't become a park ranger, and 18 wouldn't marry Krillin. Android 16 would remain alive and stay in Dr. Gero's lab, surely receiving modifications and enhancements. As for Dr. Gero, he would continue his research, strengthening himself and his androids while searching for a way to defeat the Saiyans. Meanwhile, Goku remained alive and healthy, training alongside Gohan. The two would end this saga much weaker than in the original story, especially Gohan, who didn't achieve Super Saiyan 2. However, with Goku alive and the android threat still present, Gohan wouldn't slack off in his training, so over time he should become even stronger than when he ended the android saga in the original story, and should begin the Majin Buu saga even more powerful. As for Goku, he might be weaker in the Majin Buu saga, since it's likely that the fact that he had been dead between the Cell saga and Majin Buu saga was very important for his evolution and for him achieving Super Saiyan 3. But Goku will definitely reach at least Super Saiyan 2, and his Super Saiyan 2 form in this alternate reality would likely be more powerful than his Super Saiyan 2 form in the Majin Buu saga. And as for Vegeta, he would probably also have Super Saiyan 2 by the alternate Majin Buu saga, and he would be even stronger than in the original Majin Buu saga. But would the Z fighters even survive to the Majin Buu saga? What would be Dr. Gero's next move? How would this story end? Comment below with your theories, and if you'd like me to bring the next part of this story about what the Majin Buu saga would look like in this alternate reality. Guys, if you like this video, leave a like on it. It's really important that you leave a like because I'll know that you enjoyed it and want a continuation. Also, don't forget to leave a comment on what you thought of this story and if you want to see a continuation. And of course, I need this video to have a good amount of views to know if it's worth continuing with this story, so share this video with other Dragon Ball fan friends you have. If you enjoy our channel's work and want to contribute to us and get some exclusive benefits for a very small amount, subscribe to our Patreon. The link to learn more is in the video description and the pinned comment. That's it guys, a hug to you all and see you in the next video.